Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche podcast. It's a Friday show. I think I promised you guys a fun show. This might not be a fun show. This might be a sad show. But, you know, I don't know. Some people find that fun, maybe. I'm Rudo. We got Big E. We got J Mike with us today. We're going to be talking the most painful losses in Avalanche history. I figured now is a good time to do it. I didn't want to do this show right after the Avs lost in horrible, painful fashion. I do think this most recent loss might well end up in some of our top fives, but I wanted to give it a little bit of time to breathe and maybe a little bit of catharsis with Dallas being eliminated now. So we will get into that. But before we do, Dallas being eliminated means the Stanley Cup final is officially set. It will be a rematch of last year's final. As A Wolf in the chat, they're saying it's the first rematch since 08-09 with Pittsburgh and Detroit. In that one, Detroit won the first one. Pittsburgh won the rematch, which gave Sidney Crosby his first Stanley Cup. So maybe McDavid can follow in those footsteps and get his first with Edmonton here. First off, both these teams 1-5, which puts us in this weird situation where there's now just 4 days without any hockey. So both teams get to come in rested. Let's start there. I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Who do you think benefits more from the rest, Florida or Edmonton?
I'll go.
Wow.
I think it would favor a team with the veterans like Florida, just the older guys, a little more rest time for the legs, but I'd also argue just the way that Edmonton has been playing, the pace that they're on, they've got some serious momentum rolling at the moment. And to now just have to sit for 4 days, like I know the rest is optimal, but if I were them, like I would prefer it to be more like a traditional, 2, maybe 3 days. 4 days is a long time to just sit around.
Yep.
I think Florida played that card down the stretch. You know what I mean? Since Christmas.
Sure.
And I think they'll benefit from it. You know what I mean? Because they play such a hard style. You know what I mean? That it might benefit from a few days off. You know what I mean? And they had some guys, as you know, a couple games ago, they were missing. Reinhardt, Greer, and who else was Makela, Mikko Makela. So I think you got to remember what's coming up. You're banged up a little bit because of the last 3 rounds. And for Florida, that's a flight. Florida to Edmonton. That's a flight. And
second
you're
longest in the league, I think.
Yeah, so that you're and I'm anticipating 7. That's just my gut. I don't know which way yet. I'm not committing yet. Got time. But I'm anticipating 7, and I'll tell you one thing. I lived it. My first playoffs in the NHL, like, remember what I was telling you, I played the whole year in the minors. I got called up at the end of the year, and I was the guy taking warm-up and getting scratched every game, which was awesome because it was so unbelievable. But it was Toronto versus LA, and Toronto was in the Western Conference at that time. It went 7 games. I didn't play a game. All I did was take my pregame naps and go for warm-up, and I was exhausted. I was exhausted at the end of that series, and I didn't play a shift. It's a lot of work coming up. Maybe that plays a little bit to the advantage of Edmonton, a little bit, maybe. If we're talking about fatigue, I'm not talking about play. I'm talking about fatigue. Edmonton's more used to it than like Brad Marchand, being a Boston Bruin all those years. I mean, God, it's just call that the cocktail league, the conference in the East. It's so easy. You know what I mean? It's like, man, you're in your own time zone every night and midnight by everywhere you're at. It's all good. So I do believe that rest will benefit a little bit the Panthers. It's going to benefit both sides, but I think because they've been playing that card since Christmas, you know what I mean, like resting guys, and so they obviously know a lot of stuff we don't know, injury wise, right? And then we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be a good final again. So I'm excited for it.
Yep, I do wonder if Florida has maybe had a little bit more of that injury luck where these couple of extra days matter to them as opposed to Edmonton, who game 4 lost Zach Hyman and he's just cooked. He's done.
He's cooked, yeah.
Right. There's no, a couple extra days doesn't matter to him, whereas it might to some other guys. And I'm sure Edmonton has guys that could benefit from a couple of
For sure.
too, but it seems like Florida maybe got away with it a little bit more with some lesser injuries and things like that. When we actually look at the two teams on the ice, let's start from goalie and work our way out. Look, Skinner at times looked good in the conference finals. Like you do have to give him a little bit of credit. He played some quality games there. I would still give the nod to Bobrovsky in Florida, but who are you guys taking for the goalie edge?
Go ahead, Jim.
I mean, yeah, I think Bobrovsky is just a little bit more proven in this type of setting. I mean, Eric's he's said it a couple of times now. Like for all the flack that he catches, Skinner has been pretty clutch for them in some pretty big moments. He's only given up, I think, like 5 goals in the last 4 games. So he's on a good pace right now, and they have momentum. But again, just kind of going back to what I said earlier, can you continue that? Like especially a guy who's kind of been in the groove, you want the rest. But I wonder if a guy like him who'd been in a rhythm there, going to close out the series, it's a lot of time to like sit and think about it and get in your own head potentially. I might be overanalyzing it, but I think just based on how these two guys have looked at various times in the postseason, you got to go Bobrovsky based on the whole record there. That was a very long-winded point to say he's been more consistent, but you get it.
I agree with Jay, Mike. My guy's Bobrovsky. I do believe that the last couple seasons he showed what it's like, even the year before, obviously when they lost to Vegas. My only concern with him is, and again, it goes in with that long distance between the two teams. This guy looks, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I've heard about it, the legend of Bobrovsky. Like he loses 15 to 18 pounds a game of liquids, right? He looks like a complete toothpick, at the end of the game. And it's like, Skinner is more like me, a meaty guy, you know what I mean? Like a little big fella, like me and Bruto, you know what I mean? Like I like that. So maybe get a little bit more energy in there. That's my only concern with Bob, you know what I mean? Because when it goes downhill, sometimes it tends to go downhill. If you saw the Vegas series a couple of years ago, towards the end, and I'm not blaming him. I'm saying he just wasn't as great. He's been great. He makes the great saves at the great moments of a game. I really like his demeanor. And if you're a hockey fan, start watching Wednesday. I tell this to the kids all the time. Like, watch this guy every time there's a whistle. I swear, if he doesn't give 3 pads in the back on the shin pads of his teammates, like he doesn't give none. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. A little tap in the back, a little knuckles, like it's amazing. Because a lot of times goalies like won't get involved. They're showing the zone, they won't. But this guy is so appreciative, and you can tell it's genuine. That's kind of why I like it. That's my beef a little bit with the goalie we used to have here. Remember in Colorado, I didn't like the way he treated his teammates. This guy is unbelievable, and so I like Bobrovsky there on the edge. Skinner, I've never been a fan. But I'm going to tip my hat to him because he's been awesome. And to go what he went through, you're talking about mentally to beat down the drain, to have a city and a fan base really going at, like honestly. And you can say you can block all the noise you want. At the end of the day, the noise is there. And he's from there. So he's been outstanding. And we used to say that in the scouting world about James Neal. Like James Neal's great until he's not, right? You know what I mean? So Stuart Skinner's been great, but he has that possibility that he's not. You know what I mean? And that's the one. And unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be able to control that part of it. You know what I mean? So again, I wish him nothing but the best because he seems like such a good dude. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm tipping my cap to him because I've never been a fan, and I did pick Dallas because I said there's no way. Ottinger's better than him, and no chance. And again, he was better than Ottinger. So way better than Ottinger. And again, I'm not talking about the 2 goals last night. I'm talking about as the series. But I'm going to give Bobrovsky the nod, but tipping my cap to Skinner because it's been remarkable what he's done.
I will say this, and apparently I just want Dallas fans to continue hating me forever for this, but Dallas was the worst 5-on-5 offense in the playoffs. And some of that is because Skinner played well, but chicken or egg here. Does Skinner look good because Dallas just can't score a 5-on-5 goal to save their lives? What's that going to look like against a team like Florida that has a bit better consistency when it comes to their scoring ability and doesn't need Pete DeBoer to beg the world for power plays every single interview? So we'll see about that. Hey, a lot of Dallas fans hate Pete DeBoer now too, so we might be in the same boat on that one. Defense then. Florida, obviously last year's cup was built on a well-rounded defense as a team. They lost some of the pieces of that D-core, but still super solid. You have Ekblad fully back now. You still have a bunch of great pieces there like a Forsling. Edmonton's defense obviously missing Ekholm, but has performed well in these playoffs so far. Can you get me to a push? Can you get me to Edmonton at least pushing on the defensive side, or are we giving another nod to Florida?
I'm going to go Florida. I'm going to jump ahead of J. Mike here. I'm going to go Florida because former Avalanche, Sly Lefebvre, right? Runs the D-core like Nolan Pratt here. He's done a marvelous job there last few years. But it's not by accident you get to the finals every year. The coach has a lot to do with it. The players have a lot to do with the manager, but also the assistant coaches and things like that. So Sly's done a marvelous job with what he's been given, because sometimes it's been a little thin. But they've done the job and they've made the Nate Schmitz of the world, like we talked about yesterday on the show, actually play up to their ceiling and not the floor of their potential. And he's done a marvelous job there. And I think Bill Zito, I'm not a Seth Jones fan. I'm not, but he's fit in like a glove there, and that was a great trade for them. To match him with Ekblad, and obviously Forsling, what all-time greatest pickup in the history of waivers in the NHL. One of the greatest pickups in the history of waivers. Again, like I said, Makela, since he's gained a ton of experience in the last few years, and he's done a marvelous job. And then the Schmitz and guys like that, right? So I have to give them the nod because Ekholm was back last night, first game back for Edmonton. So, that's a big boost for them. But I still think that the experience and the closeout factors and of the Florida is better than Edmonton. Even though Edmonton, McDavid was so frustrated the other day when people were asking him the question about, oh my God, it looks like you're defending better. Like, those guys defend pretty good. I mean, they don't. How many times did they give under 20 shots, right? You know what I mean? To the Stars, in the playoffs. And is it because they're scared of Skinner? I don't believe so. I think they trust Skinner at some point. You have to start trusting him. The guy's pitching shutouts like it's Rockies wins. You know what I mean? Oh no, I shouldn't have. That's too early. I should have said that. Like, that's not fair. But he's you know what I mean? Like, he's done the job, but also Edmonton defends well. They do. And part of the reason is the way the Avalanche defend well too is they got Draisaitl, they got McDavid, and they have the puck the whole game. So it's like you're never in your own end when those guys are on the ice, and that's the thing with Makar and McKinnon. And so I'm going to give the edge to a boy Sly there with Florida, but it's pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Eric kind of at the end there hit what I was going to focus on, which was maybe, if you're going 1-for-1 comparison, I think Florida has the edge defensively, but Edmonton, with the way they can control the puck, the way they push the pace, they're dictating the tempo. I mean, that's such a huge asset for your defense. Like they're going to be often, I mean, unless Florida can just bring some crazy violence to the mix and slow them down somehow with the way that Edmonton, and that's a joke, obviously, for the record, but with the way that they push the pace, like I think they're going to be all right. And I was really impressed with how they were able to limit the damage. And I think some of it is what Rudo has been preaching, which is that Dallas was not, or they were a little bit flawed offensively. It was hard to sustain the way that they were winning. But also you've got to, credit Edmonton for what they were able to do in that series. So I'll give the slight nod to Florida, but I don't think you go into this series looking at it as some like major gap between the two teams in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, Edmonton did what the Avs couldn't to Dallas, in that they got out the leads and actually held on to them. So that's the difference.
Yeah, 100%.
Do want to talk about the forward cores, but we do have to pay a few bills before we jump into that conversation. So let's jump over and make sure we're not going broke out here. Look, we're about to give you our predictions in a little bit about the Cup final here. We've all been there. We've all set up the parlays that are one leg away, and then something crazy happens, and you end up missing on that parlay. That's where the Hall of Fame app comes in and is built to fix things like that. It started by two lifelong sports fans who also happen to be Ivy League grads. Hall of Fame app makes player parlay research smarter, faster, and data-driven. It's not just a group chat full of your buddies with hot takes. This is a full analytics engine. It gives you access to advanced stats, historical data, powerful tools to help you bet smarter. The app is built for everyday sports fans, so it's easy and intuitive to use. Jump in with them today. You'll get an idea of your parlay chances to hit. You'll identify weak legs so you can weed them out before you even place the bet. Whatever you're going with, MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, or even college sports, the Hall of Fame app gives you beautiful charts, clean visuals, and real insight, not hype. So make sure you're getting with the Hall of Fame app today. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but they also get 50% off their first month when they use code DNVR at checkout. Just download the Hall of Fame app on iOS or Android, or visit hofbets.com and enter code DNVR, and you're all set with that great deal. Once you've used the Hall of Fame app to get her done with whatever your predictions might be, make sure you take that money, you get yourself a good foundation and good floors with Empire today. Jump in with Empire today. It's a bunch of different ways you can do it with them. You can obviously go to them. You can see what they have at their stores. You can stay at home and have them come to you with a free in-home estimate. Or if you don't like people and you're an introvert like me, you can go online and do it online. You can measure out your space. You can see what the floors look like in that space based on their online tools. Whether it's carpet, hardwood, or tile, they've got it all for you over at Empire today. They only carry the best products, and when you do find a product you like, they use professional installers at your home. So schedule that free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. DNVR listeners can get a $350 discount when they use promo code DNVR. Yep, that's right, a $350 discount with code DNVR over at empiretoday.com/DNVR for full details. Or, of course, you can always call 1-800-588-2300 Empire. All right. Second period,
smooth, man. Pro's pro on the ad delivery. Missed some
days,
time from the show, came back like he never even missed a step. That's a pro in his element.
Some days I got it. So other days, I do okay. We'll do better once we get Manscaped back. Put it to you that way.
Maybe come back.
Forward cores. Look, I am hockey fan number one. I love Florida's forward core. I love Sasha Barkov. I love Matt Tkachuk. I love Sam Reinhart. I love Sam Bennett. I love the forward core they've got. Simply, they ain't Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, though.
You saw it last night.
Yeah, this one isn't much of a debate, I don't think.
Yeah.
Like the firepower they have offensively and in that forward core is just absurd. I mean, that's what makes them so scary, right? I mean, despite all the potential question marks you have in the other elements of the game, they're going to score, and they're going to be dangerous. I guess you have the confidence if you're Florida, but just based on last year. But I mean, I'd be terrified of this series if I was pretty much anyone.
Yeah. McDavid and Draisaitl are going to make you earn it at very least, if not beat you for it. So I don't know that you have to look much deeper, but you go ahead.
Well, just look at that play yesterday. All of a
Yep.
sudden, oh, it's coming back at the party in the building, and they scored 2 goals, and all
Nope.
right. And then I remember I was sitting with Max. I'm like, it's all good until the other guy, until 97 touches the puck. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it took what, a few minutes, and all of a sudden it just took the air out of the building. And it's a nothing burger play. Nothing burger play.
Yeah.
And it ends up like he's on and then don't worry, he was burying. There's no way he was getting denied, right? You knew it. Like you just knew it. I wish you could bet right there in that half a second. You know what I mean? That, from the blue line to the net, or that two
Yeah.
seconds. It's like, yeah,
Think it-
100% he's scoring.
Getting Connor McDavid odds from the blue line in, you're not getting good money, buddy.
That's what I'm saying. It'll be like, I'm betting $1 million, and you'll make $400, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I knew it, But yeah, it's just like, this guy is a gamer. He's a game break. I mean, I always tell you all the time, watch Draisaitl, best backhand passer in the NHL. Oh my God, that first goal. He just catches on the rim there on the backhand. He throws it backhand off a pool shot right to McDavid's stick, and he gives it to the old worm in front of the net there. I mean, it's like, but those two guys are wrong. I mean, they're just wrong. And I think that's different this year with the addition of Frederick that we had high on our list, as we know for the Avs to get. Then obviously I'm not a fan, but Evander Kane healthy he is a difference maker, so to speak, in that aspect. So they can go toe to toe with the like you were saying, the violence of the Panthers. So yeah, I think you have to give Edmonton the edge there, just because again, you can't just shove Nugent Hopkins and those guys like that. But Draisaitl and McDavid, holy bananas, like tough to argue with.
You've forgotten Edmonton's fatal flaw with their forward core. Corey Perry exists, and he's not allowed to win Stanley Cup finals. He's only allowed to make them. So that's
Well, he did early in his career.
Yeah, he did win
He
one.
was allowed one.
And he's
Yeah.
0 for 5 now. He's about to be 0 for
Yeah.
6 if Edmonton loses this one since his win. So
Crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So
not that Corey Perry isn't a major contributor. Actually, he's had a really good playoffs for Edmonton, but he's not a key piece. We'll put it to you that way. We'll see. I don't have a great guess here, but I'm going to ask you guys for predictions. Before I do, there have been 4 previous rematches in the modern era. There are a bunch with the original 6 that I don't care about. In the expansion era, Montreal beat St. Louis twice in a row in the very beginning of the expansion era, so that one barely counts. Montreal also beat Boston twice in a row in the late 70s. The Islanders beat Edmonton, and then Edmonton got their revenge on their repeat matchup that time. And then you have the the Pittsburgh-Detroit series in the late 2000s, which they ended up splitting, as I mentioned earlier in the show. So this isn't a brand new occurrence. This isn't something that's coming out of left field for the NHL as a league. Does Edmonton have it in them? Who do you got and how many games? Let's do the predictions.
Edmonton in 7. It's McDavid's time. He's an all-time great player. I'm just my gut is he gets it done. Florida has a lot of momentum going themselves. Obviously, they've got the postseason experience, but I just feel like an all-time great, this is kind of where he establishes a significant element of his legacy.
I agree. I'm going Edmonton in 7. Home game 7. They get it done. I feel that if you saw the game yesterday, you could see McDavid's face. You know what I mean? Like, oh my Lord. He was, like I said, he wasn't going to be denied. And he was like, no. And you could see the agony of defeat last year, right? When he was snapping after game 3, right? Whatever. And then when he was, very emotional after game 7. And I do believe the greats usually get there. Right? They usually do. I think he gets there. I think he just doesn't. And again, I'm not even talking about Draisaitl. I'm talking about McDavid, and that's how stupid this conversation is because Draisaitl is an absolute machine. Um, but I just think that it's their time. I think it's his time, and I think they learned a lot last year, and I think that they know how to get there, and I think that this is going to be a different series. I don't anticipate a 3-0 lead, like last year, like Florida. You know what I mean? As much as Edmonton was better afterwards. You dig yourself a 3-0 lead. We all know, like, I mean, odds are it's you know you're not going to get it done.
You
They
dug
get came
80% of the
close.
grave at that point.
But
Yeah.
that's what I mean. It's kind of, it stinks because that's the regrets after. Because it's like, oh, and remember he was yelling, "Not good enough, not good enough," right? Dig in, dig the f in. You know what I mean? So it's like I do believe they have some regrets there from the first 3 games, but I do believe that they get it done. They get it done in 7.
I'm taking Panthers in 6.
Again, I like it too. I'm two amazing teams. I mean, just amazing.
Why
I
you lean in Florida at the moment?
I just think they're built for it a little bit better. Like, yes, McDavid could just go Super Saiyan and win the series for them. Him and Draisaitl could just do it. But when you break it down piece by piece, I do think Edmonton is not set up to grind out this Florida team. If Florida drags them into a brawl, I don't think Edmonton has it in them. They've got players like Evander Kane. They've got players like Corey Perry, but top to bottom, Florida will just work you to death. It's tough, man. And like maybe the biggest advantage of all this, Florida's not afraid to play dirty. You can like that or dislike that, but at the end of the day, it makes it really hard to beat them. And I just don't know that Edmonton has that in them to be able to go toe to toe on that level with Florida. And I don't think I don't think the skill gap is so big that Florida can't overcome it, especially when you start getting into the depth of those lineups. You have a guy down the lineup like Aver Hagee that gives them big goals every single year. And you look at the depth of the Edmonton lineup and you go, this is fine. This is okay. I don't hate it, but I don't expect a lot of results out of it. I'm sticking with that, and I don't know. I just don't think Stuart Skinner can do it. I really don't. So I'm Florida in 6 on that one. It's the NHL, right? The no happiness league. Nobody can get the result that they actually want. We just have repeat winners over and over and over. It's. I wouldn't be upset either way. I really am indifferent on who wins the cup this year. I do think that when you do play for a Canadian team in the finals, there is a significantly larger amount of pressure as opposed to a team like Florida. Even last year when Florida hadn't won one, just media-wise, the pressure difference is significant. He talks about it all the time in Toronto. Edmonton's not quite Toronto, but still, when you're in the finals, it's a big deal.
Oh, the city. I mean, anywhere you go. I mean, they're talking to you about it. Like, it's just like, it's a lot of pressure. But I think those guys embrace it. But I like your pick too, because for me, Florida, and I said it the other day, is the best constructed roster in the NHL. So it's the most well-built roster for playoffs, in my opinion. So I can't argue you. I mean, it is what it is. I wish that you could know, so we can use Bet365 and whatever, do whatever we need to do, but we don't know, so you can only assume. But both teams have done a marvelous job to get there. It's been a dogfight for those teams, and again, you got to remember, Edmonton was down 2 to LA until that fateful, whatever you want to call that, challenge kind of changed things around, you know what I mean? And then, but they've learned, and I think you have to go through failures in the playoffs to get better. And I think that was a failure the first 2 games in LA, and that kind of got them going and get back right on track because they've been on the heater since.
I got another question for Eric. I know we got to go to a break here, so I'm not going to put us on a big old tangent. But when we come back, I want to kind of stay on this topic of the added pressure and the U.S.-Canada element.
Yeah.
It certainly, with things like the Four Nations this year, it feels like there might even be a little bit extra there. But let's get into our break here, as we are brought to you by the official vehicle of us here at DNVR and the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche in Toyota. Of course, Toyota has had trucks in their DNA for generations. They've got the Tundra. If you even want a hybrid, they've got the Tundra iForce Max truck. They've got 17 different vehicles with all-wheel drive, so you're covered whether you go off-roading here in Colorado or you just want that extra grip for bad weather. And they've also got 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from. They offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. So whatever it is you want, if it's not the trucks, you got things like the 4Runner or the Land Cruiser. You got things like the Corolla too. If you want a smaller car, they've got it all. So go check out your local Front Range Toyota dealerships, including AutoNation Toyota Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Again, Toyota, the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and us here at DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. And once you got yourself into a new Toyota, you're also going to want to check out Bet365. Go place those bets on Florida or Edmonton. Put your money where your mouth is with Bet365, or rather, put their money where your mouth is, because when you sign up at Bet365 with code DNVR365 today, you put in $10, you bet $5 on anything. Win or lose that bet, they'll give you $150 in bonus bets to play around with. You can take those bonus bets, you can put them on the Panthers, you can put them on Edmonton. You can even put them on crazy stuff like McDavid to score a hat trick. If that's what you want to do, jump in and do it with Bet365. They have boosted parlays every single day. They have a bunch of amazing deals. They even have a DNVR bet every so often that you can jump in on. So get with Bet365 today. Use that DNVR365 code to get the $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Again, you do have to deposit $10 to do that. You can go to Bet365 for more details there. You can use the bonus bets on spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Of course, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, Canada versus America. And look, Matt Tkachuk was one of those vocal leaders of the U.S. too, right, on that Florida team. So makes sense.
Does Edmonton go into this series with the added pressure of the fact that Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup since '93? Like, I'm about to turn 30 years old. I've never seen a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup. I mean, I got to imagine that's something that just irks, like it's their sport. So is that like a silly narrative that's concocted by the media? Like, or is that, something you truly feel like as a team from Canada to end that streak?
Yeah, a little bit of both, I think. I think as players, as we all know, the rosters are constructed with a bunch of different
Guys from all
countries,
over.
right? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's like, okay. But I think representing a city, like Edmonton or Montreal, Toronto, I think you take pride into, because I know in Montreal they still take pride in saying, yeah, we're the last team to win, 1993, Montreal Canadiens. You know what I mean? And then, the last Canadian team to win. And you'll get a lot of patriotic guys, like, all of a sudden they don't know who to follow anymore because the Toronto Maple Leafs are out or whatever. But they're like, all right, we're going to follow Canada's team, which is Edmonton. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how they rally behind it. If you do the math, I mean, how many Canadian teams in the league right now? 7?
7.
I'm sure 7, yeah. So 32 teams. I mean, odds are, you know, a U.S. team usually wins, right? Just by numbers. But yeah, I think as a player, it's more you want to make that city proud and the country proud and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't think it comes with added pressure. I just think it just comes with a little added bonus. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, that's fun too, because we can, say it. Hey. But I think the fans will say, like I said, in Montreal, I know, I mean, that's where I'm from, right? So I just know I hear it all the time. Well, at least we have the last Canadian Cup, you know what I mean? And it's, and again, like I said to you, 1993 is my first year in the NHL, and I was back home for the summer. We just lost, I was telling the story earlier to LA there. I was with Toronto, and then they went on to the finals, and obviously Montreal beat them after losing game one, they won 4 straight, and that's the year that they won 11 games in overtime out of 16, right? I mean, it's absolute Patty Waz run. It's legendary. And he always said it. No goals are going in. You know what I mean? And no goals went in. So, but it was crazy. The city was crazy. The pressure off the players was off, and it was unreal. Because it's such a crazy market to win in, and I think in the U.S. you can compare it to, was it 94 the year after with the Rangers, right? They hadn't
Yeah.
won in so many years, and the pressure of Broadway and all that kind of stuff, and the big market of New York. And so yeah, I mean, I think it just comes with a little bit of incentives, like a little bragging rights, but I don't think it puts more pressure on you. But I think it's just more fun that way, and you want to make the city proud, and that's evidently in Canada.
There's some fair perspective in the Toyota chat too from Ian, who says, I think the whole Canadians rooting for Canadian teams element is overblown. A lot of them are rivals with each other. We wouldn't be rooting for Dallas to win, for instance, which I think is a great point. I mean, if you're
Exactly.
not going to root for your rivals to win. I just also imagine, as hockey fans in general, though, like maybe it's not pressure on Edmonton, but I got to imagine it's something that irks Canadian fans, or I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much stock into it because I'm on the U.S. side of things, but poking the bear a little bit.
I think it grew. I just like one more point. I think it grew more when it was like in the 90s, when I was playing, and 2000. The Canadian dollar was so low, and you know what I mean, and it was an unfair advantage, for so many years. So that's kind of where I think it all started a little bit. Well, yeah, we all know that we can't, spend that X amount of money, or that's why we're not winning cups. You know what I mean? And I think that's where it kind of stemmed a little bit, like where it all started. And I think it grew organically about, and I agree with the chat there. Like it is what it is. To some people that it doesn't matter, and to some people it's just a subject to talk about.
I think it's certainly a little bit overblown by media. I remember back in 2011 when Vancouver was in the final. The Canadians I knew were the ones rooting against Vancouver the most. Like, they did not want
Didn't want
Vancouver
them to be the ones to end it.
Yeah, exactly. So
hey, I'm all
Especially
for
if they're
that
from
too.
Montreal.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we don't want to lose our thing, 93.
The petty fan experience is something that I can rally behind. So
yeah, no, you're not wrong about that.
Yeah, and I always think of some sort of parallel too. Like, it's tough to root for a different fan base sometimes, but whatever. But you just think no further than the Quebec Nordiques moving to
Yeah.
Colorado. I'll tell you one thing: the people are still brokenhearted, and I get it. I'm not making fun of them. They're brokenhearted from that '96 win. All the heartaches that they went through, the bad seasons, the burger seasons that they had, they were awful. You know what I mean? And then they go, whoa, they win. I mean, to some people, they'll never recover. And I understand it.
As they should be. Sorry, not sorry, because I got the benefit side of it.
No, of course.
But it, like, totally sucks for them. That's the most painful way that could have happened for Quebec fans. It's unfortunate for them.
Yeah.
All right, let's transition into the title topic of the day. Hockey and sports in general is pain. 95% of the time, your season's going to end in pain. So I want to talk about it. Yeah, it was probably more like 99% of the time, but it's part of sports. It's something that I think everyone signs up for, and we sometimes got to talk about it. And I wanted to wait. I didn't want to have a super emotional reactionary podcast about the most painful losses in Avalanche history, because I do think this year's one is probably up there, but I didn't want to let too much recency bias in doing it immediately after they did. So I asked you guys to come up with your top 5-ish games that are the most painful in Avalanche history, that losses. And we'll kind of go through them. I don't think we need to make like a proper list or anything, but we can kind of go through them and talk about which ones were the worst and which ones were just bad, like normal. I don't know. Let's just start for you guys as number 5. So what did you have?
Go ahead, E.
Well, for me, um, in the history, and again, I'm trying to be not biased, right, towards one era to the other, but I was there. Believe it or not, I flew in that game with Bill Romanowski. Is the 2000 game in Dallas. Ray Bork had been traded there, remember? And it was Game 7, Dallas Stars, and boy, oh boy, Mike Keane and the gang, just kind of took it, from the good old Avalanche, and Ray really thought that was going to be his year, and I remember Dave Andrechuk was part of that trade too, and he was older, and he was crying like a baby at the end, really thinking that was his last chance. He ended up winning in Tampa a couple years later, thank God, and retiring. But you're chasing that thing for so long, and there was such heartache, and to see Ray, and the guy's disappointed for Ray, and I think again a little bit like McDavid this year. You know what I mean? From last year's heartache to what we're predicting that maybe this is his year. So for me, that would be the number 5 there. You know, the 2000, the first Ray one. Where it didn't work out. It took another year to work out.
Certainly in the moment, it wasn't guaranteed that Bork was going to come back for another year either. There was a lot of emotion in that for sure.
Yep.
I want to add the caveat that I'm only 29, so my first major sporting experience that I remember watching is the 2001 Stanley Cup. It was on my 6th birthday.
There you go.
I remember it. I tweeted about it, when we were covering the Star Series. Whenever I think of it, I still think of Hanging by a Moment by Lifehouse, because they apparently put that song deep into my brain somewhere. But I'm just adding that because I know that there were some really painful losses between 96 and 2000 to Detroit, to Dallas. I'm aware of the history, but I wanted it to be organic to my experience as a sports fan. So I'm just adding that for context. Number 5, one of the more random ones, but for whatever reason, it just killed me. And it was the 2004 San Jose game, Game 6.
Yep.
The Avs went down like 3-0 in that series, but then Joe Sakic basically by himself won 2 games, scored all 3 of the goals. Felt like they had the momentum. Then they fall to San Jose in overtime. I was so into that team. You had like Korea and Solani, and it felt like they should have accomplished so much more. So that was kind of like one of the first years that taught me it's not all about talent and firepower, and sports are heartbreak. A lot of the time you're going to go down pretty painfully.
Yep. And that was the last year, not that we really knew at the time, but ended up being the salary cap era on the other side of that, and that Avs super team was no more after that, and far more than just Solani in Korea and all that. You end up losing Forsberg down the line, and it was, there are other factors too, but obviously the beginning of the end of that true 1.0 era for the Avalanche for sure. My number 5 was 13-14 against Minnesota.
I got that on the list too.
Yeah, that Game 7, a game they pretty easily could have won, had multiple leads in that third period that they, end up giving up that one extra goal. This one, in the moment, in that, like, obviously when you look at the advanced stats of that team and you knew they were way overperforming, but in the moment, that was an organization that it felt like had multiple false starts already. Duchesne's draft year, they make the playoffs. It doesn't really go anywhere. In 11-12, they make the playoffs with Sacco as his first year as coach. That doesn't really go anywhere. And that first year back in the playoffs with Patrick Waugh as the coach, it felt like, all right, this is the one where they finally turn the corner. And then you have the absolutely devastating overtime Game 7 loss in a series that was like, that series is crazy. If you go back and look at some of those games, like EJ's diving into his own net to stop empty netters that the Avs somehow score with just 8 seconds left or whatever it is in that game. Like it felt like the Avs had so much going their way, and then they lose that game. The season is over, and we all know the next couple of years they go nowhere. So That
It was
one
a
was
weird
my
way to go down too. Like Varlamov had like been the man for
yeah,
so long,
and just
and then
ran out
all
of
of a sudden
gas. Yeah.
it's like he just couldn't hold the lead, and like
Yep.
it just that one was brutal. I was in the dorms my freshman year of college. We were like the sports room, Super Bowl, all the big playoff games. Everybody would come in our janky little setup. So we had like 9 of us in there, all packed in. And when that game went to overtime, you could just feel the tide had turned, and it was like we dropped the ball here. There's no way this one goes our way.
Yeah. That
Very
not a good
similar to
feeling.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm sure we'll have some crossover with some of these, but your number 4s. E, what do you got?
Yeah, I had the same one as Justin, the San Jose one, because
Okay.
I was so disappointed. I really thought we'd be one of those teams making the comeback. I was working with the Avs there at the time, and boy, it was a disappointing. It just you could feel like you have it, and then it was an empty feeling. Empty feeling.
Justin, go ahead.
I had the Minnesota game there,
Okay.
so we've talked enough about that. But I'll throw out one that's in the Toyota chat, which didn't make my list, but that's great, and that's the 2022 St. Louis series. Just a frustrating way to go down. Felt like that team had a lot of potential, and for whatever reason, the Blues they get under my skin a little bit. The hatred that I have in my heart for Dallas now has taken up a lot of real estate that I had for some other teams, so it's helping me get past some traumas of previous postseason experiences, because now I can just focus on my hatred and to one city, like the good old days when we had Avs Detroit going. But yeah, I did feel like that 2022 series against St. Louis had a lot of frustrating moments.
They got through it, so it was fine. But yeah, that game 5
The game
definitely
5
hurt.
that specifically is what I should have mentioned. Yeah.
Again, that should be an all-time Nathan McKinnon highlight, and it's a nothing burger, and everyone remembers Darren Helm instead.
Yeah.
My number 4, also in the Toyota chat from Joseph, 2002 Western Conference Final Game 7 against Detroit. About as bad as a Game 7 can go for an organization.
Yep.
Yeah, you get bopped 7-0.
They pulled Waugh, didn't they?
Yeah.
They did at the end of it. Just an absolute disaster of a look. I believe it's the greatest rivalry in sports. I am super proud with what the Avs have done across the course of that rivalry. Wins like that one help cement the fact that Detroit probably won on paper when it comes to that rivalry. It's just the reality there. That's why it hurts. That's why it's one of the most painful losses. All right. That's why we're here.
Especially because that was like kind of the end of it too. Like,
yeah, the last real big game it felt like in that rivalry for sure. All right, let's keep it rolling. We're getting into the real painful ones here now. The one thing about a 7-0 loss is at least by the end of the game, you're just numb. It's just like, yeah, all right. We suck.
Oh, I was numb. I had about 4 full pizzas, Little Caesars pizzas by myself in the coach's room, because that's, they keep bringing Little Caesars pizza in the room. That's where I met Little Caesars pizza there that night. Oh my Lord, I ate my sorrows away. But number 3, like I'm gonna cut to the chase right now. This past year for me, not even part of the Avalanche, obviously, just covering with you guys, and wow, did I feel bad. I felt bad because I felt that there's a lot of regrets. I felt that it's a missed opportunity, and this is not sucking up to management. It's not. I just know how hard it is, and I know how hard it is to put your guts on the line, and I thought that they really, starting with the goaltending trades, and all the way down to the trade deadline, they really laid it all out on the line for the guys to go and take a run at it. So you always feel bad for the players, but I just felt so bad. And I'm going to use the word Chris just because he's at the Chris and Joe at the lead of the staff, and I felt so bad because what they did was masterful. I still think it's a shame he wasn't GM on the list for GM of the year, but whatever, it's a different show. But that one hurt me because I just know I haven't lived it, being in the front office, but I've obviously lived it up close with my father. How tough some of those moves were to attain, to pull the trigger on, to get it done and go for it. And so for me, that's very painful right there. And I just know that the pain that they're going through right now.
Yeah. This year
I
was
got
number 2
the
for me.
Dallas for last year is where I've got with Duchesne scoring the game winner. It feels like salt in the wound. You have the third period lead too, and Jamie Benn and Duchesne being the ones to take you out was just like a little extra salt.
Dude, it being Duchesne hurt, that one didn't make my list. This year's one I had at number 2. This year's one, and this is cheating a little bit because it's not just one game. But
this guy's stupid face. Sorry, I had to just interject because J Mike's is the one I used for the thumbnail.
yeah,
Mac just sitting on the freaking floor, just like dumbfounded, and this dude's stupid face, just so excited. Yeah, no, that one definitely was super annoying.
Yeah, for sure. This year's one, they had a 2-goal lead with 13 minutes left. I mean, they blew it. There's no.
That's my number 1, but I'm biased because it was my first NHL postseason series, and from a media standpoint, I was exhausted after the travel process, but I was fully bought in, and I was really it felt like such a massive moment. I mean, we've said it a million times. It felt, and obviously didn't play out that way as Dallas ended up choking their opportunity away, but it felt like whoever came out of that series had a great chance to make the cup. And I don't know, I just remember leaving the arena like having nothing to say, quietly walking across Dallas, went to the 7-Eleven, bought like a tall boy. I mean, it was pretty embarrassing, but it hurt.
It did.
It still hurts.
I've had a lot of people tell me this is the most painful loss in Avs history that they feel like. So I get it. I have one above it, which we'll get to. My number 3, also Dallas in the bubble year.
They all sucked. All those Dallas losses sucked.
They do. The bubble year, the Avs had a lead with 4 minutes left in that game. If they hadn't had their third string goalie forced to play in the series because of injury, maybe a save gets made. It just, the Avs find painful ways to lose to the Dallas Stars. And I have that one on here over 2022, which I get it with Duchesne, but there were other factors in that series where the Avs did some shooting of themselves in the foot that I can overlook it as losing that series is maybe painful for off-ice reasons more than it is the on-ice reasons for me. But the 2021, I thought they could win it if they got through that Dallas series. If they get through that Game 7, maybe they get a little bit more health and goal. I thought they could do it. And obviously,
plus, like, you factor in everything else. Like, it felt so good to have sports back, and that was like a fun run. They had some big moments in the bubble, so it a lot like this year. It just felt like Dallas raining all over our parade and killing another fun moment.
Yep, it's the way it's gone for the Avs against Dallas. It feels like. We have your number 2 and number 1. I think we have one left from you, Justin.
I'm gonna go number 2 and number 1. I mean, one at a time, but the only reason is because I played in those 2, and that's why like I said, for me, this past month, they're probably the one that leaves the most meat on the table. You know what I mean? Like, not that Rudo eats chicken wings because there's no meat left on those bones, right? There's none. But I felt the Avs left a lot of meat on the bones this year, and that's painful. But my 2 are just because I played in them. I'm gonna go to 98 Edmonton series, and I'll tell you one thing. I tell Rudo all the time, and we get into spats about it because I always say you can't just turn on a switch. You can't, because I learned it the hard way there. All year long, the Patty Waz and King guys that had won cups, were just all over us about guys. We can't just turn on the switch. We can't. We're gonna pay for it in the playoffs, and sure enough, we paid for it because we weren't all year long really on top or on our toes. And we were up 3-1 in the series, walking away with it, not even close, against a team that we should kill, which was Edmonton at the time. And you know what? Let it slip away on Game 5. Let it slip away Game 6. Oh, okay. So we'll just go home and kill him at McNichols. And it was the most embarrassing game I've ever been part of. It was embarrassing. We got whooped. Not even close. It was awful. ended up being Mark Crawford's last game. Krupe, guys like that. But it was so bad that for me that's painful because I played and there was so many regrets there because I felt that we had a team that we could go in all the way and still compete for it. So
Yeah.
personal.
Any 3-1 blown series lead is
Ooh.
not going to feel good.
Well, that's where I'm at. I just put the 2003 Minnesota series. Like you
That's
go
my
up
number
3-1
one. That's
and
my
you
number
lose
one.
3-2 in 3 straight games. 2 of them are in overtime. That was, again, like the Detroit finish in 2002. That one stung, but it was so bad you almost like disassociate and block out by the time it's 4-0. The Minnesota series was death by a million paper cuts, and we got to sit there and bleed out at the end of, I believe that was Waz's last series, if I remember right.
Yes.
Yeah, like it was.
Yeah.
It just hurt seeing an icon go out that way. It would have been like if the Broncos lost Super Bowl 50 and that's how Peyton Manning went out. Like it was just
Andrew Burnett scores the OT goal, and it's all over the press box and mini. It's like every time you walk by, you're like, oh God.
Yep.
Painful.
That's my number one because of the Patrick Waugh situation there, because of the context of that was Forsberg's return season after the injuries. He goes and wins the MVP that year, and you lose in the first round to Minnesota. And then I know they built a super team the next season, but really that was kind of the beginning of the end of that era for the Colorado Avalanche. So
Richard Park OT goal from the wall there. Ugh.
Yep. Is what it is. That's why it's my number one. Yeah.
No, but I'll go to my number one quickly. And then for me, it's because as a player, that's as closest I got to win it. It was 98. 97, Detroit. I have to make a confession. We won game 1. I'm gonna say 2-1 overtime. 2-1. Joe scored like 2 minutes to go. I fed him. Fedorov couldn't contain me. Not a big deal, but it was asking. And I don't know what I was doing on the ice, but I was there. But anyway, I just felt that we won the game. I really went back home that night, and I was like, I started thinking a little bit like a young kid, like, what am I gonna do when we win? And you're gonna say it was only the semifinals, but again, we were gonna kill the Eastern Conference team. Like
that was the finals.
Detroit
Everybody knew it.
Everyone that was finals. They ended up beating Carolina or Philly that year, 4 straight, whatever. Like, we would have done the same thing. No, I'm not being cocky. It's just we were so good, those 2 teams, that we weren't gonna lose. But we won game 1, and I remember going home and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do with my day with the cup? You know what I mean? Like, Like, not out loud, but just to myself. And we ran out of steam. It was such a long year with the World Cup the summer after the Avs Cup in 96. And then by 97 playoffs, we were out of steam and we lost in 6. And that one gutted me because I was like, I don't think I'll ever be as close to winning a cup. You know what I mean? And because you think it is at first, and you're around and it's easy, you know what I mean? But it's not. And that one hurts for me. Personally.
I can't from the fan chair, it's unbelievably painful. I cannot imagine the stuff on the ice for losing. I don't even want to know, man.
And you're talking about Detroit that we absolutely hated. Now I learned to respect them, but we hated one another. It was crazy. And to see them move on, and you're like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? You're talking about not watching any games of the finals. Mine, 97 finals, I did not watch one game. No chance.
You'd poolside with some drinks at that point.
Yeah, you're like, you
anywhere else.
Yeah, you don't want to hear it because you know what's happening.
Yeah, it is what it is. That's part of the process of being a sports fan or an athlete yourself. So nature is healing, or podcasts are healing. I don't know. Did we heal you, or did we just give you PTSD?
Yeah, it's healing. You learn to live with it.
If you can't laugh, you're just gonna cry. So you got to learn to laugh.
That's what it is, I guess. You get through it, and then you remember the Avs have also won the cup 3 times. So
could be worse.
Feels pretty good as a fan from that perspective. Yep. We are wrapping up today's show. We're off the weekend, obviously. J. Mike and E will be back on Monday to talk to you. I don't know what they'll talk about. Who knows? The Brock Nelson sounds like maybe he'll stick around. I don't know. Maybe it sounds like something interesting there. Maybe they'll talk about how Pete DeBoer is a horrible coach. That's also an option. I don't know. But we appreciate all y'all hanging out, spending your Friday with us. If very quickly before we get out of here, Today, last day of our flash sale, $36 to become a DNVR diehard. We have a roundtable coming either later today or tomorrow that you guys can read about the Avalanche offseason. There's tons of other amazing content there. You can check all that out. You can get free shirts, all great stuff. So make sure you get in on the deal to become a diehard today, but we'll leave it there. We appreciate y'all. This has been the DNVR Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you on Monday.
We all silly like the mayor.